Devil May Cry.
Welcome to A Line Through Time, where I take the time to look through your favourite franchises and work out how it all lines up. It's been a while since I talked about Devil May Cry in a fan-made game theory episode that ultimately spawned this show. A video that pissed off a lot of people for ripping off MatPat because that's what presenting my own theory and research in his style as a tribute is, right? I've been waiting for Itsuno-san to announce his new game since last January to decide when best to do this video, but Sony apparently refused to show the DMC5 trailer at PSX, forcing us to wait another 6 months just to know a new DMC was being made.
DMC is back!
Anyway, Devil May Cry goes back to late 1999 to the development of Resident Evil 4 for the PS2. RE2 director Hideki Kamiya returned to direct the new entry, which was alleged to focus on the now immortal Umbrella founder, Oswald Spencer, and the twins that were created as part of his experiments. One of these twins, the sword-wielding police officer Tony, was to be the protagonist. As development progressed, it was felt that the game was leaning too much towards action and straying too far from the series' roots, haha. As such, Kamiya and producer Shinji Mikami proposed that the game be spun off into a new franchise and a proper RE4 be made later. Sure is a shame Capcom forgot this crucial decision later, isn't it? And so, Tony became Dante, Spencer became Sparda and Mundus, the experiment concepts were reused for the Wesker children in RE5, and the game became 2001's Devil May Cry, a hack and slash that gave birth to the so-called character action subgenre. The game stars Dante, the orphan son of a demon and a human. In addition to the main events, there are two key backstory events that we need to discuss. First is the war between humanity and the demon world 2,000 years ago, where the demon Sparda defected and fought off his brethren almost single-handedly, earning him the title of Legendary Dark Knight. Then we have the tragedy 20 years before the game, where, following Sparda's death, the demon king Mundus sent a group of demons to murder Sparda's family. His wife Eva sacrificed herself to save Dante, while his twin brother Virgil was also presumed dead. When Trish, a woman who resembles his mother, arrives at his demon hunting shop to tell him that Mundus is trying to make a comeback, Dante follows her to Malay Island to stop him. Dante defeats his corrupted brother, Trish betrays him and then joins him, and Dante defeats Mundus, finally avenging his mother after 20 years.
Jackpot!
To go along with the game, there was a tie-in light novel prequel also titled Devil May Cry. The book depicts Dante as a mercenary going by the name Tony Redgrave. After being confronted by a man named Gilver who turns out to be Virgil, Dante obtains his signature handguns from a local gunsmith and seemingly kills Virgil before returning to his shop to begin the events of the game. It really doesn't add much, and Virgil's appearance completely contradicts what we were told in the game. After the game, Kamiya moved on to work on the likes of Beautiful Joe and Okami, leaving the sequel to apparently no director until Hideaki Itsuno stepped in to steer the ship halfway towards crashing on the rocks, making 2003's Devil May Cry 2 kind of a not fun mess. This time, Dante is working with the demon hunter Lucia to kill the demon-worshipping human CEO, Arius. The two learn that Lucia is a failed artificial demon created by Arius, but Dante assures her that devils never cry and leaves her to deal with Arius while he goes to the demon world to kill Arius' demonic sponsor, Argosax. Dante is last seen riding a motorbike in hell, while Lucia waits in his shop for his return. Again, there was a light novel, Devil May Cry 2. This one sees Dante working with another demon hunter named Beryl to stop the demonic artifacts, the Beast Heads. During an excursion into an alternate universe where an evil Dante became Mundus' general, Dante works with good versions of previous bosses to kill himself, an army of Trishes, and Mundus, and then returns home to find Lucia's invitation. It's pretty weird to say the least. Shockingly, Capcom didn't kill the franchise or turn it over to a new team. Instead, the DMC2 team were given the chance to redeem themselves. And goddamn if they didn't do just that. 2005's Devil May Cry 3 Dante's Awakening is a fucking masterpiece. The game is a prequel to the first game, whose story contradicts the first novel, removing it from canon. Apparently the scenario writer was concerned about the contradiction, but Kamiya and Itsuno told him to focus on telling a good story and to worry about how to fit it into the series story storyline later. The story retcons Dante and Virgil's history so that the two clash here in their late teens, and Dante has known Virgil was alive for about a year. Dante awakens his powers, wakes up to justice, and opens his demon hunting business, now given a name thanks to a comment made by newcomer Lady. Virgil is lost at the end of the game, leading to his appearance in the first game as Mundus' brainwashed servant. Instead of a light novel, DMC3 was instead accompanied by a manga prequel titled Devil May Cry 3. The idea is that each of the 3 volumes focuses on one of the major characters, Dante, Virgil and Lady, to explore their past a little and set up their roles in the game. Dante's isn't all that important, aside from giving him a brief encounter with Virgil, suggesting that this is the event Dante is talking about as
nearly a year
ago. Virgil's is about him meeting Arkham and making preparations. Lady's was never released. I've read that the artist quit over money, but I don't know why they couldn't just get someone else if that was indeed the case. It's a real shame too, because Lady has the least known about her pre-DMC3. She's still an innocent schoolgirl when she appears in Volume 2, but I guess we'll never see her transformation for ourselves. A scene from Volume 2 was later adapted and tweaked for inclusion in DMC3 Special Edition, where Virgil is playable in Dante's campaign, with a couple of unique cutscenes. In 2007, the series received an anime tie-in from Studio Madhouse, Devil May Cry, the animated series. The anime is set not too long after DMC1, given that Dante is still using that game's outfit. It's mostly episodic, barring episodes 1, 11 and 12, with Dante doing random jobs themed around elements of the series like demon-human romance, motorbikes, rock music and gambling. I'd say just watch episode 1 for some decent action and episode 4 for Lady and Trish's first meeting. The rest is not that great, it's very easily skippable. The anime also came with a pair of drama CDs that feature 3 stories with the anime cast. I can't say for sure since they only exist in Japanese, but the presence of both Patty, the little girl Dante is looking after in the show, and a woman connected to her orphanage, given Patty's reunion with her mother in the show's finale, suggests that these stories are set during the anime's run. 2008 saw the series debut on PS3 and Xbox 360 with Devil May Cry 4. This time, Dante is positioned as the rival and mentor to the new protagonist Nero. Thanks to Dante, Nero learns that the religious order he serves is corrupt and planning to acquire demonic power, leading to the two teaming up to take them down. Timeline-wise, the game is stated by the developers to take place between the anime and 2. This is further supported by the name of the 3142 graphics art book that was released a few years ago. Nero has mysterious ties to Sparta's bloodline and can wield Virgil's sword Yamato. While it never made it into the game, the explanation was one of the many additions made by the later novelization by the game's scenario writer once he'd gone freelance. It turns out that Virgil had travelled to the town of Fortuna many years ago and had sex with a human in spite of his disdain for humanity, producing Nero. There's still wiggle room for them to go a different direction, but DMC5 looks to see Virgil return as Nero's new rival, so we'll have to wait and see.
I've come to retrieve my power. You can't handle it.
After this, Capcom made the baffling decision to outsource the next game to UK-based developer Ninja Theory. 2013's DMC Devil May Cry is a vast departure from the core series, and Capcom was shockingly vague about its place in the franchise, leaving it ambiguous as to whether it was a reboot, a prequel, or an alternate universe spin-off until, I think, shortly before the game came out when they revealed it was a reboot. But don't worry, DMC apologists. I'll be exploring that game in a separate video because this one's going to be long enough without delving into an alternate timeline as well. Between then and the E3 2018 reveal of Devil May Cry 5, the series only received an updated port of DMC and DMC4 Special Edition, which adds a few cutscenes for Virgil, Trish and Lady that don't really explain anything beyond that Virgil definitely came to Fortuna once. Oh, and a DMC4 pachinko machine that had more new cutscenes made for it than Special Edition, and that was just cruel. Now we have DMC5 on the way, featuring Nero as the main hero, while Dante and another character, probably Virgil, are also playable. Clearly quite some time has passed since DMC4 going off Nero and Dante's designs, and Dante appears on a motorbike, which could suggest it picks up right after DMC2's ending, but his outfit is much closer to his DMC4 one, so we'll have to wait and see. And so that's the chronological order of the series, but what about the time frame and Dante's age throughout? This is what the original video set out to discuss, so let's try to go through all that a little quicker this time and address a few concerns people brought up in response to that video. So kick up a chair and grab a slice of pizza because this theory hits the jackpot. The series has never been explicit about Dante's age, but there have been a number of hints dropped over the years that we can use to come to a pretty reasonable conclusion. We'll start by gathering details from within the stories themselves to help establish the time span between installments. First, in Devil May Cry 3, Dante states,
"It's been nearly a year since we last met."
This meeting is actually depicted in the manga, not the reboot as a baffling number of fans believe, placing the game 1 year after. Next, in the first game, Trish says,
"You're the man who lost a mother and a brother to evil 20 years ago."
Bear in mind that Virgil's role in DMC3 didn't exist yet and he was supposed to have been presumed dead along with his mother until now. Just ignore what the novel said. Trish could very well just be rounding up or down to 20 as a rough number, really placing it in the range of 17 to 22 years ago. But since 20 is the number we're given, and it's just as likely to actually be 20 as any other number in that range, and the 20th anniversary of Eva's death does seem like the perfect time for Mundus to send a demon modelled after her to manipulate Dante, I'm inclined to believe Trish is being specific and it really has been 20 years since Eva died. And just to clarify, Eva's death wasn't moved along with Virgil's supposed death in DMC3. That's still locked to the boy's childhood. Some people misunderstood that last time. Virgil's introductory cutscene in DMC4 SE claims his visit to Fortuna takes place a few decades before the main game. When exactly Virgil visited is unclear though, so we'll leave that as a side note for now. And finally, the second novel's epilogue states that several months had passed since yada 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 before leading directly into the events of DMC2. Several doesn't suggest that many, so I think it's safe to say these two events occur within a year of each other. And that's it for explicit in-story sources. Well, there is one other, but well, we'll get to that. For now, let's look over one particular detail that is merely implied. In the manga, there is a scene in which Arkham tells Virgil about a woman who was murdered by demons on the outskirts of a town 10 years prior. That seems like an oddly specific thing to include until you look closer at two other scenes. First is a flashback / hallucination Virgil has later on, which shows Virgil as a naked child, you've got issues Japan, being attacked by demons in a graveyard while a house burns in the distance. There's nothing else surrounding the house, but the graveyard must be close to some sort of settlement since it's not just for 1 or 2 people. It's almost as if it was on the outskirts of the town, So we now have reason to believe Arkham was discussing something from Virgil's past, but what about that other scene I mentioned? Well, earlier on in the manga, Dante has his own flashback, this one to the death of his mother. One notable thing about this scene is that Virgil isn't present, which suggests that these two flashbacks are actually going back to the same point in time. Let's also keep in mind that Sparta had just recently passed away as well, so perhaps Virgil, who always put more stock in his demonic heritage, was visiting his father's grave alone one day, his brother and mother still at the house, when the demons attacked and Eva was killed. So these 3 scenes together suggest that Arkham is talking about Eva's death, which occurred 10 years before, making the events of DMC1 9 years after DMC3. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. There are 2 other notable pieces of information from outside the series itself, straight from the fingertips of Hideki Kamiya. First, when asked about Dante's aging process, Kamiya replied that Dante ages like a normal human when in human form, but not in Devil Trigger. He simply chooses to live as a human. Because of this, we now know that the series takes place over the course of a normal human lifespan, not hundreds of years as a lot of people surprisingly believe. And no, Dante's healing factor doesn't slow down his aging like Wolverine's does. There's never any precedent for either of those things, but a lot of people just assumed that that was the case. Second, when asked on Twitter how old his Dante, i.e. DMC1 Dante was, Kamiya responded with, similar in age to Cobra. Who is Cobra? Cobra is the star of the 1978 manga of the same name and one of the main inspirations for Dante's character. His robotic partner Lady is also where Mary's alias comes from. In episode 3 of the anime adaptation, Cobra visits his own grave, which marks him as 24 when he fakes his death, which was about 5 years earlier, making him 29. Now this is not exact, as Kamiya specifically said similar in age, but it's pretty solid info nonetheless and will be helpful later on to verify our findings. You may dispute these since Kamiya hasn't worked on the series since 1, but he did create the series, so without anything to contradict this counts as word of God and can be considered canon. So we've managed to work out the amount of time between everything from the death of Dante's mother up to the events of the first game. But the next step is working out when DMC4 takes place, as the anime's placement is reliant on the 2 games it falls between. To work out the time frame of DMC4, we need to look to one of those non-canon sources, the DMC4 novelization. Once again, it was written by the game's scenario writer writer who included many details that had been cut from the actual game, including the revelation that Virgil is Nero's father. Being explicit only in a non-canon source for now, the canonicity of this connection is still up for debate, but we need to assume that it is canon as that was the time frame the developers had in mind when making the game. So if Virgil is Nero's father, what does that mean for our timeline? Well, since Virgil is trapped in the demon world from the end of the third game up until the events of the first, where he seemingly dies, it's obvious that Nero must have been conceived prior to the third game. Since Virgil would presumably spend more time with Arkham as their plan grew closer to fruition, my guess is that Virgil's visit to Fortuna was shortly before or after his first meeting with Arkham in the manga, possibly travelling there at Arkham's suggestion. If Nero is conceived in that year, he would be born closer to DMC3 than the manga. It's also been stated by developers that Nero in 4 is the same age Dante was in 3. If Nero is born around 3 and is DMC3 Dante's age during 4, then DMC4 Dante is double the age he was during 3. So what do we know about Dante's age in those two games? Series producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi has gone on record as saying that Dante is in his teens during DMC3, late teens from the look of him, and is in his 30s and approaching 40 in DMC4. Approaching 40 suggests somewhere between 37 and 39. Since no specific ages or years are ever given, I think we can assume that no character's age would ever include a decimal point, instead always being a full number. Or put another way, a character would never be considered 18 and a half, only 18 or 19. This means that DMC4 Nero and DMC3 Dante's ages must be full numbers, doubling which always results in an even number. The only even number within that age range is 38. With this, we can conclude that DMC3 Dante is 19 years old and DMC4 Dante is 38. Now, the novel also makes the claim that Virgil's visit to Fortuna was 16 to 17 years before DMC4, and while I accept the relationship between the two as being most likely canon, I don't accept this particular detail. If Virgil was there 16 to 17 years prior, then Nero was born almost a year later, making him 15 to 16, and I could maybe buy that he's supposed to be 16, but that would mean that doubling that age would make DMC4 Dante 30 to 32. Again, Word of God suggests that Dante is in his late 30s, not early 30s, and this source is ultimately non-canonical, so I'm inclined to disregard it. If we assume the much more reasonable ages I found, then Dante and Virgil are 19 during DMC3, minus 1 year to reach 18 for the manga, minus another 10 to get 8 when their mother died, plus 20 to get 28 during DMC1, and double 19 to reach 38 for DMC4. Looking at these numbers, they are consistent with what we have so far. 28 is similar in age to Cobra, who is 29. 19 is considered a teenager, which Dante is stated to be in DMC3. 38 falls right in the middle of our nearly 40 age range from DMC4, and a few decades sounds adequate for 19 years. Now that we know Dante's age during DMC1 and DMC4, we also know that there is a 10-year gap between the two, which allows us to try to place the anime into our timeline. For this, I have gathered 3 clues to help us. First of all, Dante is wearing his DMC1 outfit instead of his DMC4 outfit, suggesting the anime occurs closer to DMC1 than DMC4, so somewhere within the first 5 years. Second, after joining Dante at his shop at the end of DMC1, Trish has gotten fed up with Dante's attitude and gone solo. This kind of relationship breakdown most likely took a while to occur, so I would guess at least a year has passed since Trish joined Dante. And finally, Lady in the series resembles her DMC3 form. By the time of DMC4, Lady has, well, let's just say Kalina Ann isn't the only bazooka she's packing, if you know what I'm saying.
How rude!
Or in more professional terms, her breasts and buttocks are filled out quite nicely compared to her original design. Since her anime self still resembles her DMC3 teen self, and yes, she is a teen, her outfit is clearly a school uniform, she isn't likely to balloon up like this in just a few years. As such, I would give her as many years as possible to reach that level, and since at least a year has passed since DMC1, I would give her the full 9 years to grow, making Dante 29 during the anime. Some people will point to Trish's comment in the anime,
"Didn't I tell you for years to go easy on the pizza?"
However, this is only in the dub by Funimation, who are known to take unwarranted liberties with the scripts in most of their dubs. And there is no mention of a time span in Funimation's own subtitle track for the Japanese script, so I'm inclined to assume this was an addition made by the script writers of the dub and consider it non-canon. So what's left in our timeline? Just DMC2 in the second novel, but there's really nothing about their placement aside aside from their position and Kobayashi claiming that DMC2 is far after DMC4. Virgil and Eva were the key so far, but DMC2 mostly forgets about them, as well as good game design, but I have managed to find something that will put the final two pieces into place. Take a look back at Dante's ages throughout the series. 8, 18, 19, 28, 29, 38. Notice anything? The number 8 appears regularly. Every time the last digit of Dante's age is an 8, something of note occurs in his life. From this, we can assume that DMC2 takes place when Dante is 48. Or does it? That was my original conclusion when I fully compiled all my findings before I made the GT video, but then I decided to try and finalise the anime's placement in the timeline, which left me with two ages where 9 is the final digit. So what if Dante is actually 48 during the novel, he has an unmentioned birthday before the epilogue, and is 49 during it and DMC2? I think that works quite nicely. So without further ado, the Devil May Cry timeline goes a little something like this. And BD and AD obviously mean before Dante and after Dante because we have no confirmed years for the series, you imbeciles. Obviously AD isn't Anno Domini. Of course I'm not saying Dante was born the same year as Jesus, honestly. 2000 BD. The Demon King Mundus wages war with the human world. A demon named Sparda betrays his own kind to protect humanity, defeating Mundus and sealing portals between the two worlds. He then spends the next 2 millennia protecting humanity before settling down with a human named Eva. 0 AD. Eva gives birth to Sparda's twin sons, Virgil and Dante. 8 AD. Sparda dies and the family is attacked by Mundus' demons, resulting in Eva's death and the brothers being separated. 18 AD. Virgil meets Arkham and the two begin working on a plan to obtain power. While investigating a group of demons themed around Alice in Wonderland, Dante learns that Virgil is still alive. Virgil visits the city of Fortuna, having a sexual encounter with one of the locals. Arkham murders his wife, prompting their daughter Mary to become a demon hunter and seek revenge. 19 AD. Virgil's son, Nero, is born in Fortuna. Dante attempts to open a demon hunting business until Virgil and Arkham's plan goes into motion, prompting Dante and Mary into action. Arkham and Virgil are defeated, Dante obtains his father's sword, and Virgil remains in the demon world where he challenges and loses to Mundus. Dante opens his shop under the name Devil May Cry. 28 AD. Dante is visited by a demon named Trish who resembles his mother and informs him that Mundus is returning. Dante defeats the corrupted Virgil and then defeats Mundus. Trish joins Dante at Devil May Cry. 29 AD. Trish temporarily leaves Devil May Cry to become a solo demon hunter. Dante is hired to look after a young girl named Patty until the demons hounding her are killed. 38 AD. Dante travels to Fortuna to investigate the Order of the Sword. He fights against and alongside Nero and defeats the Order, leaving Virgil's sword in Nero's possession. 48 AD. Dante works with a woman named Beryl to stop a plot involving an artifact known as the Beast Heads. 49 AD. Dante is hired by Lucia to help stop Arius' attempted summoning of the demon Argosax. Arius and Argosax are both killed, and Dante is last seen travelling deeper into the demon world to possibly never return. And just to clarify, because a shocking number of people somehow didn't get it last time, when I say possibly never return, I'm aware that Lucia hears a motorbike roll up outside the shop at the end and that's obviously supposed to be Dante, but until we actually see Dante after he rides further into hell, it could be anyone. They could pick up from that ending with Lucia meeting Trish, Lady or Nero, all of whom have some association with motorbikes and a reason to be here. Plus, it was intended to be something of a meaningful ending, acknowledging that we might not ever get another proper DMC game, and it certainly sounds better than saying he comes back to the shop where Lucia is waiting. It's called showmanship, jeez. Plus, SMT3, Beautiful Joe, MVC3, MVCI, Project Cross Zone and other cameo and crossover appearances don't count because they aren't canon. But let's make a quick prediction of DMC5's placement going off just the first trailer. Clearly quite some time has passed since DMC4. Nero looks at least a decade older, and it would make sense for that to be the case given the real life 11 years since 4's release. This would place it, according to our timeline, around the time of DMC2. Dante's outfit, from what little we've seen of it, resembles resembles his DMC4 attire, suggesting it's before DMC2. However, the motorbike he's riding, if this is the first we see of him in the game, could be his bike from DMC2 with an updated design. But don't just assume that is the case, motorbikes are hardly a rare sight in the DMC world. If it is after DMC2 and Dante's been gone a while, that would explain Nero needing to come to Redgrave City instead of sticking to Fortuna. Or maybe the mystery man attacked him in Fortuna and Nero chases him to Redgrave City. Maybe Dante did something in hell that facilitated Virgil's return. A lot of this is pure conjecture, but I'm inclined to assume we're finally moving post DMC2 after 15 years. Hopefully this means we'll get to see HD Lucia because she deserves a second chance. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory! You can't stop me! If you liked this video, please rate and subscribe and share the video around. Those are the magic words, right? That's how you become successful on YouTube? Am I doing this right?